Welcome to day 306 of the New Way. This is a continuation of the discussion we started yesterday about Jesus and the apostles leaving the upper room and going to the Mount of Olives to pray. We looked at Matthew, Mark, and Luke's record yesterday. Today we'll look at what John recorded about this time. I'll read John 18, verse 1. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now, when it says that this is when Jesus finished praying, he's referring to the high priestly prayer that we looked at on days 294 through 299. We've talked before that the writers sometimes left some details out, maybe because they forgot, or maybe because of prioritizing different thoughts, or maybe because of the trauma that was experienced during this time. But for whatever reason, John did not record the discussion with Peter and the disciples being told to find swords for fighting. The other possibility is that the high priestly prayer was in fact the last thing that happened before they left the room. I have sequenced these events to the best of my ability and based on other scholars' work, but maybe this did occur immediately after the prayer was finished. I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure. But we are told that to enter this garden, Jesus had to cross over the Kidron Valley, or the Kidron Brook. Other translations call it the Kidron Ravine, because the valley was very steep between the city gates and the Mount of Olives. Jesus and his disciples had to hike down one side and up again on the other side. Let's take a detour from our discussion and think about this valley that Jesus crossed to enter his place of prayer. I too must cross a ravine to enter my place of prayer. Even though it's just a mental ravine, there are steps I must take to truly enter God's presence. No, I don't need a priest or candles or incense, but I need to mentally shut out the world. I've found that there are things that keep me from God's presence. There are ravines that block my times of prayer, and for me to really connect with God, I must conquer them. One ravine that I must cross is busyness. Psalms 46:10 says, "Cease striving and know that I am God." The New American Standard Bible says, "Be still and know that I am God." I cannot get to a true state of prayer while my mind is thinking 1,000 other thoughts. I must concentrate on God and God alone. I must let my mind become still before his throne. Can you imagine standing in front of God's actual throne and your mind fretting about what you are going to wear or what you are doing tomorrow? It just doesn't fit, does it? Yet so many times we try to pray while our minds are flitting around about details. If you really want to do some serious praying, you must cross over the ravine of mental busyness and be still before God. Another ravine that I must cross is sin. Psalm 66:18 says, "If I regard wickedness in my heart, the Lord will not hear." The New American Standard Bible says in the same verse, If I had cherished sin in my heart, the Lord would not have listened. I am amazed at the people who believe that they can live totally self-focused lives, disobeying God's direct commands, and still expect God to provide them with answers to prayer. He might, just because He's gracious and loving and cares for you, but He doesn't promise to answer your prayers if you are not in a right relationship of obedience with Him. Don't get me wrong, He hears everything. He's God, but He's not compelled to grant you your wishes when you are not being His obedient child. The final ravine I must cross is similar to the first one, but it is a deliberate shutting out of the world's clamor to enter His throne room. Matthew 6:6 says, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." The New American Standard Translation says, "But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." I have become very deliberate in shutting the door so that nothing distracts my prayer time. If I'm praying during the day, I always tell David that I'm going to my prayer room so that he won't worry and come checking on me. I try to pray early enough in the morning so that the telephone won't ring. I pray in a special room with the door shut so that I don't see the laundry and dishes and other housework waiting for me. Now, we've talked before about praying all day long and in every circumstance, and as you are driving, shopping, teaching, training, cooking. Prayer is always available. Jesus prayed like that too. In every situation, He could easily lift His eyes to heaven and ask for God to bless a particular situation. But we also see that it was Jesus' habit to slip away to pray, either to the wilderness or the mountains or to this Mount of Olives. Luke 5:16 says, Jesus Himself would often slip away to the wilderness and pray. This phrase is repeated in Matthew 14:23, Mark 1:35, Luke 5:16, and Luke 6:12 through 13. We're also told in these verses that He often prayed all night long. If Jesus felt this need to spend time alone with God, focused and still, separated from the world, how much more do we need those times? In His service, Dale.